So the aims of the course are listed here, but I think we've covered that basically. So we want you to be able to do full and fractional factorial analysis. Regression, I don't put so much emphasis on actually. So the full and fractional factorial analysis is important. Regression is something that is actually also part of this, but so the emphasis is here. For that you need statistical hypothesis testing. You need to understand this, so we'll cover this again for people who've had this before, but for people who haven't had it, so you have a chance to see it here for the first time. And then this response surface analysis or response surface method is the last part. Okay, the course material, this is a textbook by Douglas Montgomery and co-authors. I'm following the 5th edition. If you have a more recent edition, that's fine as well. It's an open book exam. You can also buy it as PDF.
Can we then use our tablets on the exam?
No, we don't allow, we're tough. We don't allow tablets because we don't allow mobile phones or tablets at an exam because we don't know with whom you would be communicating. So if we catch somebody texting during an exam, this is called a fraud. And, people can be very tough here.
So since it's an open book exam, we have to buy the hard copy then?
You bring a hard copy, exactly. So if you have the PDF, you print out the PDF so you can bring it. If you have the book, you bring the book. Whichever way. We don't allow notes for this exam. For my because a lot of you are also in my metals course. For the metals course, you can bring anything as long as you can carry it yourself. You cannot ask somebody else to also bring material to the exam. I had this happen once. You know, there was a lady entering the room, and she was followed by her boyfriend, who was also carrying material. So you have to be able to carry it yourself. We don't want you to bring the whole library, so to speak.
Can the book have our notes? Can we do some notes on the book?
No, so it has to be kind of pristine. Yes, for this course, but for the metals course, you can bring your notes. But this course, not. Okay. The schedule, there is 8 lectures. The dates are given here. They should also be in your online agenda, but one lecture may have dropped out because I'm traveling. So the one of 11 October has dropped out. So there's no class 11 October. And this should be more or less the program that we see, but in the beginning I'm slower, so I kind of gain speed as we get going. There's 2 exercise sessions, which are also indicated here. And I hope these dates were correct. Okay, so the exercise session, the last one, is fairly late. If you think it's too late, let me know, then maybe we can try to find an earlier date, but it's very difficult because it's kind of a heterogeneous audience to find a time which can be earlier. So in the past I've given a class for this course in the evening, an 8 to 10 class in the evening, which for me was also very special because my brain stops working around 9 in the evening. Completely. Okay, so exam. Yeah, we do also have an exam, which is an exercise exam. So there's no oral defense of the exercises. So you just basically do the exercises on paper. and I correct that. But there's also a discussion on your project, so this project we'll talk about in just a minute. And the score is distributed evenly between those two. Okay, so that's the organization of the class. If that's okay. Any questions about this at this moment? No? So then we can look at the project, how we organize that. And I haven't put this on Toledo yet because we need to see if this is okay. What I have here as a guideline. So the project you do is some type of experiment which you think of yourself. And to make sure that what you think of is okay, the first deliverable is a description of what you plan to do. So you pick a project you are doing as part of your master or PhD thesis, or have done, which is more difficult because then you have historical data. So sometimes that works, but most of the time it doesn't work. Or, and this is not indicated here, you just do something which you haven't been doing or are not doing. So something random which you think would be suitable for this. Okay, so most people actually do that. They do just something, you know, something with planes or marbles, or one person actually was baking cake. The first year she ate lots and lots of cake that year. It's, so I don't advise you to do that actually. It's, okay, so and the idea, of course, is that you pick something in which you can apply the things which we learn here. So you'll do statistical hypothesis testing, the factorial design and analysis, regression and response surface analysis. We have teams of 2 and 3 people. Okay, so I don't like people to do a project by themselves, because I think it's interesting to work with 2 or 3, and also it helps me at the end to read the projects. I have less of them. And so the idea is to form these groups, and that you can do in just a minute, and think of an idea and then send this to me by 15th of October. And you can pick languages if you limit yourself to these 2. Okay? Dutch or English. So what to think of when you define your projects, unless it's your master thesis and PhD thesis and you have to do the experiments anyway. So if you do something out of the box, they should be easy experiments, okay? It's the idea that you can do this in a couple of hours, the experiments, all right? It shouldn't be days. That's not the point. Yeah, we had a group of people who were doing. They were measuring heart rate, and then they were. So the factors were the time of cycling, time of running, or something like this. And this was a group of also, again, ladies who were doing this. And they got so tired doing the experiments, in the end they had to ask a man to do all the experiments for them. Because so you have to think of something that you can actually do, you know, it's easily. Don't do something which requires you to go into the lab and use expensive equipment. So try to do something which you can do on your own. You need to have a response variable, of course, and the control variables, they should be clearly defined in your task description. Otherwise, I don't know what you're proposing. At least 2 of the control variables and response variable should be continuous. Okay, you can have discontinuous control variables, factors, so it's the same. But 2 of the 4 should be continuous. And it's nice if your response has a maximum or a minimum value. Okay, so you can do the response surface method. All right, then the second deliverable is your project reports, which should contain a number of things like an introduction, your setup, your results, and your statistical analysis and discussion. Not more than 3 pages of text per person. Don't put stuff which is in the book there, just refer to the book. Calculation methods and conditions you can mention, but don't put them in full, I would say. And you have your figures, graphs, and tables in appendix, which can be not more than 20 pages. Okay, and so this is a mental note. So as a group, I suggest when you sit together, you clearly discuss how you will communicate with each other, and when you think at a certain moment, maybe not today, you'll have to kind of do a planning of your work, obviously, so that you're in time. What I see often as well is, because the exam is typically 1 or 2 weeks later, that people at the exam already see mistakes in their own report, because now they actually know more than when they were writing the report, because they studied for the exam. This is why exams are so good, because you are forced to study. It's good to at least know the basics of the techniques, obviously, when you're doing this, so that your report, that when you look at your report during the exam, you think, yeah, I don't actually want to look at it because it's full of mistakes. So try to also understand the theory well before you actually finish your report, so you filter out the biggest mistakes, and obviously if you have mistakes, it's fine as well, as long as you can discuss during the exam. So in the exam we'll talk about your projects, obviously, but also if there's some things which are maybe not correct or are debatable, we'll talk about those things during the exam. So there is kind of a note on your report, but very important is also how well you understand your own project, and if there's some things which are maybe not logical, that you know at that moment what happened and why it happened, and how you would do it better now. Okay, so there will be a difference between group members based on the oral discussion of the exam. You understand? So there's, of course, if your report is awful, you start from a lower score, but you can improve it by having a good discussion. If you start from a very good project, and it's obvious that you don't know what was going on, then your grade will drop. Okay, that's how it happens. But on average, people do quite well, I have to say. All right, so this is what is expected in the statistical analysis and design. So we want some probability plots. We also want a plot just to show that you can work with error bars. Also use box plots. Decision making for 2 and multiple samples. Oh, I haven't changed this yet. The idea was to make everything 20, so this is also should be 2 out of 20. Regression analysis with a confidence interval and a prediction interval. Hypothesis testing. Design of experiments, full and fractional factorial, and then the use of response surface method. So I also indicated what the approximate weight is of these different components to indicate, because some people do not want to do this response surface map, to indicate that it's important also for your grade, if this can motivate you. Alright, so that's the project. Yeah.
Which softwares allow the surface method? Is this the Minitab, or for instance R? Because I tried with Excel last year and it didn't work. So
yeah.
Is it better to use Minitab, or does it matter?
You can use whatever, you know. You can program it yourself, or you use the software.
In previous years, what people use always Minitab?
Most people use Minitab. You're right. Yeah. I think you can use it like 40 days for free or so. Yeah.
I mean, if that doesn't work, and you don't want to use R, I really suggest you using like pandas and Python. It's free, and like anything you can program is probably like Stack Overflow. So like just an easy way of like doing everything that R can do faster.
And what is it you propose?
I use like the pandas package under Python. You can just download like a scientific package. It's called Anaconda, and it's like.
Yeah, people who have tips can send me an email, and I'll post it on the Toledo site, so people can find it there. Okay. Some tips. We already talked about this. A simple experiment, 2 replicates is fine. You need one larger data set to do the distributions. And one of the errors people make is to just combine all data and then do a distribution on it. That actually doesn't work too well. And then randomize the order, which we also discussed, so you know already everything. So I will put this active on Toledo, and in the meantime you can start talking amongst each other, see